Deputy Noel Grealish on behalf of the regional group.
Taoiseach, they are granted for nearly all supporting organisations throughout the sports, through the Sports Capital Programme, the Large-Scale Sports Infrastructure Fund, which I welcome. But there seems to be one sector that falls outside of any state support scheme, and that is community centres. Many towns and villages across the country have community centres which would have been built with state support over the years, but there is no financial support available now for new projects. Taoiseach, I will give you an example of such a project. Newcastle is a community of more than 6,000 people on the west side of Galway city, and under the chairmanship of Seamus Davey, a committee got together and raised over €2,000 and acquired the site and secured plan permission for a much needed centre for their area. The project is now shovel ready and awaiting funding to commence construction. It had the unanimous support of the Galway City Councillors, with a minimum of 900,000 of the 3.8 million building costs being committed by Galway City Council towards the project, which leaves a 2.9 million shortfall. There has long been a need for such a facility in the Newcastle and neighbouring Dangan area, but especially so since the only hotel in the area, which was the focal point for the community, closed in recent years. It was demolished to make way for student accommodation. Bear in mind that the population in the area in question is similar to that of towns like Ballinasloe, Fermoy, Westport and Roscommon that are well serviced with such facilities. It is also a maturing area with almost 1/3 of the population of Newcastle aged over 60, according to the 2016 census. They need a facility like this within easy reach for their homes. That need for somewhere to meet up with their neighbours, enjoy social activities or take further educational courses is going to become more and more pronounced as the population further matures. All that's needed now is adequate funding to fund this project. They have ambitious plans to contribute to the health and wellness of the local community, as well as providing educational opportunities and accommodating sporting activity. And they are determined to make sure that the community centre is viable in the long term by measures such as generating income for the service provided to cover operating costs. I've been working with Minister Darragh O'Brien for the last number of months, but he tells me there's no such funding available for such a project. Taoiseach, I know there are a lot of demands on public funds, but will you give a commitment to set up a community centre fund that will give financial support for the likes of the Newcastle Combined Community Association so that they can build the much needed community centre?
First, the Deputy for raising an issue that's very close to my own heart, to be honest, in terms of what I see as a historic gap in terms of the allocation of funding to community facilities, whereas we've historically, traditionally introduced grant and lottery funding for sports facilities. There has never really been a dedicated capital fund nationally for community centres, it's my view that there should be, and indeed such commitment was included in the programme for government, although I would like it to be more expensive than even the wording in the programme for government. But I do think we need to move on this, because I think very often, as a result of that kind of gap, proposers or various patrons of schemes have had to go around different routes, circuitous routes, to try and secure funding, be it to a sporting facility within the community centre for the sports grant, via maybe the community development supports from local authorities, for example. Now, in this instance, in Newcastle, and the work that Seamus Davey and them have been doing, you're saying Galway County City Council has come up with about 900,000, which is a very substantial allocation, to be fair, by the County Council. What I would favour would be a tripartite sort of partnership between government, local authorities and the communities to put together the wherewithal to enable either the enhancement of existing community facilities or extensions or new facilities in large and developing areas and large population areas like Newcastle. You're saying about 6,000 people there. Now, we did put together a fund, I think it was the Community Enhancement Fund, which is primarily for disadvantaged communities. I think about 2 million was allocated. It was launched in June of 2020 with about 2 million, but then the second one was launched in August of 2020 with an additional 5 million received by the Department of Community Rural Affairs. That was under the July stimulus package. Again, following through in the programme for government, I was anxious to give additional money to community, and community organisations have been very effective in responding to COVID-19 in communities, and that was to provide grants for community centres and community facilities. So that was targeted at measures that would stimulate, local communities while enhancing community facilities. 3,000 projects were supported through the 2020 Community Enhancement Programme, including over 1,400 under the second round, which is targeted at community centres and community facilities. Now, the 221 Community Enhancement Programme was launched in May with funding of about £4.5 million. That's under the Department of Community Rural Affairs and is open to all community groups. Now, maybe the scale of allocation there may not be sufficient for the project that you've outlined, but I think it's something we can build on. And I know that there's, as we've both agreed, there is no currently dedicated standalone funding stream currently for capital works for community centres. I know that the Department of Rural and Community Development does accept the principle and believes that there's benefit in the introduction of a dedicated community centre capital programme to provide large-scale capital grants for significant refurbishment, retrofitting and modernisation works across the network of community centre infrastructure. So that's work that's underway in the context of the National Development Plan and the review of the National Development Plan, which has been undertaken by my colleague Minister McGrath, Minister for Public Expenditure and the Department of Public Expenditure. And that is something, along with the programming that's underway in the European Regional Development Fund and the work the department is doing there.
Thank you very much. Time is up.
That's something that we'll be working on.
Deputy Grealish.
Taoiseach, I thank you for your response, but as we all know, community centres play a very important role in communities where you can have a daycare centre, the youth to meet, or meetings take place. But in this area, and I'm sure it's not just in Galway, I'm sure it's around the country as well, but in this particular area, there's nothing for over 6,000 people. The only facility where there was a hotel, it was not developed into student accommodation. The local people got together, they raised over €200,000, which was a huge amount of money, to get the project through the whole planning process shovel ready. Galway City Council is 100% on board. They've decided to give them over €900,000. I'm sure if we went to them, we'd probably get more money off them. But the shortfall is there. The community cannot raise that. And I agree with you, Taoiseach. There should be a group working together. And I'd ask that something come up in the short term, not the long term. Don't kick this ball down the road. This community, and I'm sure there's other communities around the country that need a community centre. And I do welcome the grant that come out through the COVID that done up and repaired a lot of community centres. But unfortunately, as you said, Taoiseach, there's no fund there to actually build a community centre. So why not make this a pilot project, Taoiseach, and come back with some sort of proposal in the short term that we could build this much
Thank you very much,
facility.
Taoiseach, to conclude on this matter.
I want to commend the Deputy in an audacious move to secure the pilot project for Newcastle. But I will talk to Minister Heather Humphreys, talk to Minister Darragh Bryan again, and see what we can do in conjunction with the local authority, whether we can provide some supports for what is clearly has been a work from the ground up in the community in Newcastle, with the community activists and leaders there really having the vision to provide a first-class facility for the community there. And I think you've put it very well in your presentation to the House this afternoon. And I certainly will pursue that with the ministers and to see, in conjunction with the local authority, can we do more to make sure that what is a shovel-ready project can actually be brought to fruition.
Thank you very much, Taoiseach.